Hello everyone, I'm Foibles, and today I'd like to talk about Astral Tomes in Age of Wonders 4. These are some of my favourite tomes, and I think they offer a little bit of something for just about everyone. I'm going to try and cover these a little bit faster than my previous two, talk about details and synergies and all that good stuff, and I'm probably going to fail at doing it quickly, but what ho! Let's start with our first tome. The Tome of Evocation grants excellent and cheap attack spells to any aspiring wizard. Starts you off with the Channeling Tower Province improvement. Ooh, more mana, and don't you just love mana? Plus 10 mana, plus 3 mana per adjacent conduit, and counts as a conduit itself. You are going to be encouraged to spam lots of spells in combat with this tome, so having mana to do it is always nice, and adding extra conduits is always nice. See if you can get that Mage's Guild up later. So, Channeling Tower, always good to have. You also get access to lightning weapons as a hero skill for melee and physical ranged attacks, and you get lightning blades for your melee units, offering much of the same, plus 4 lightning damage, -2 physical damage, and a 30% chance of inflicting electrified, which is a nice, simple little damage over time. It's not a bad thing to have, really. Strangely, the hero version does not inflict electrified, which is not too bad. It's just a low chance of inflicting a debuff. The electrified damage over time is a nice one to have, but since these are inflicted by melee units, it's probably going to die before you're going to get full use out of it. Anyway, you also get access to Lightning Focus, which is a similar buff for your battle mages and support units, and you're going to see a lot of buffs to battle mages in the Astral Tomes. It's similar to the Chaos Tomes, really. This is a simple one that makes them do +2 lightning damage, and again, electrified. Obviously, this is going to have a lot more of an impact on battle mages who can attack 3 times in a turn than it will on support units that can only attack once. But there's no downsides, it's just extra lightning damage. Fulmination is a simple combat spell. It costs 10 mana to cast and does 15 lightning damage in a 1 hex radius, with a 60% chance of becoming electrified. Ooh, that is a pretty decent chance for that dot. It's higher than your other ways of inflicting it at this stage of the game. This is one of the best early damage spells in the game. You will get some serious value out of this. If the enemy likes to cluster up, if you can trigger that electrified, it is nice, and it's very cheap. It's going to be useful for a lot of the game, in fact. Lightning Torrent will help see to that. This is a world spell that you target on an enemy army. All units sustain 20 lightning damage, and all units suffer -2 lightning resistance for 1 world map turn. What this means is you use this on an enemy army, do a little bit of damage, rush in and take advantage of that lightning weakness that you just inflicted upon them with your lightning blades, and your lightning focus, and your lightning everything, and just have a good old time. You also get access to a couple of units in this tome. The first of all is the Evoker. Now, the Evoker is a tier 2 battle mage, and unfortunately, I don't rate the Evoker very highly. It does have the Electrifying Arc, which damages a decent number of units, somewhat randomly since it's a chain lightning. It does more than its repeating bolt attacks if you hit all those targets in total, and it has a very high chance of inflicting its damage over time. I just think that it's a lot weaker compared to the other battle mages available in tier 1 tomes, like the Pyromancer and the White Witch, and I even don't look at it favorably compared to the Arcanist, the tier 1 battle mage from the Mystic culture. Also, just wait till you see what a Watcher does later. These guys look like chumps. One thing you do get, which is very nice, is the Summon Lesser Storm Spirit. This is a shock unit, a tier 1 shock unit, and not a lot of cultures have access to tier 1 shock units, just dark. So if you're not playing a dark culture, having access to a shock unit is very nice. This is an elemental, so he's got a few immunities, and he has a charge strike, which cancels defense and retaliation and does half physical and half lightning damage. So he is a very nice unit to have. If you can keep him alive, he will evolve into a tier 3 Storm Spirit who has a teleportation and is just a real nasty shock unit to have. So he does evolve. Somewhat difficult to keep alive. Doesn't have a lot of health, doesn't have a lot of defense, but it's nice to summon one in and have that versatility that he brings to the army. There's no way to summon the tier 3 version, so if you do want one, you are gonna have to try and keep one alive. Moving on, we have the Tome of Warding, and what a great tome this one is. Tome of Warding is one of my favorites. It's a very versatile tier 1 tome. You start off with this hero skill, bolstering support. Support abilities grant 1 bolstered resistance to affected units. Okay, I guess that's nice if you have a wide area support ability like the Mass Rejuvenation. This one isn't huge, especially when you compare it to the same buff that your own support units can get, which grants 2 bolstered resistance to affected units. This one is pretty nice for all support units to have, especially the ones with AoE heals, AoE buffs, because this means that lots of your army is going to get +2 bolstered resistance. If you had no resistance at all, that would be, I think, 19% damage reduction to magical attacks, so having bolstered resistance is good. This one is especially powerful if you're going with the Industrious culture. It turns the Industrious culture Steel Shaper into probably the best support unit in the game, since the Steel Shaper can turn that extra bolstered resistance into more stacks of strengthened and more healing. If you are going Industrious, seriously consider taking Tome of Warding. Tome of Warding also has some other nice things. Summon Phantasm Warrior is a great little summonable tier 1 shield unit. I love this guy. Half his damage is lightning, which means he can often go to toe with other melee units, other shield units, because their shield units are going to be hitting his defense, and he's going to be hitting their resistance, which is often a lot lower on shieldy units and melee units. It's also nice just to throw him in there. Having the ability to reinforce, you can throw this guy away and just summon a new one the next turn. Nice little unit. You get Mark of Invulnerability. Now this is a really, really good spell. It's not a healing spell, but don't underestimate it. It is a lot more versatile than a healing spell. It's great for saving a unit if it's in danger, makes them invulnerable to 1 turn, no damage, they cannot take any damage, and it purges negative status effects. You could use it on a stunned unit if you're desperate to get it to attack. You can't use it on the same unit more than once. Bear that in mind. But think about how to use this flexibly. This can be used offensively, and that's where it can really shine. Say you've got a shock hero with Demon Step, and you'd love to teleport him into the enemy's back line, but ooh no, he'd take loads of damage, they'd target him, he'd get an alpha strike off, but then he'd get killed. Never mind that. Teleport him in, harass their archers, and before the turn is up, throw Mark of Invulnerability on them, and watch as your enemy can do absolutely nothing as your hero is there in their backlines for 1 turn, while the rest of your army catches up. You can use that to do some seriously nasty alpha strikes and take away the consequences of your actions. Another couple of... oh, I should also mention this only costs 15 mana, so it is not bad at all. Not expensive, nice and cheap to cast. Magical Wards is your minor race transformation, +2 lightning, fire, and frost resistance. Again, that's a decent little buff to your survivability to most kinds of magical damage. No blight resistance there, but you may as well have this. It's just good to have. Static Shield, on the other hand, is a buff spell, and I am not a huge fan. What it does is it gives a 60% chance of inflicting stunned on any attackers who target this thing. This is really tricky to get mileage out of, even against the AI. If you are up against a player, you know, sort of, God here help you, got no chance. For 30 mana, this is really expensive. It's possible if you've got, say, the Industrious Anvil Guard, you can taunt things, but even if you're blocking a pass, for 30 mana, getting maybe 2 or 3 60% chances to stun, not so sure about it. You could use a sacrificial unit, throw this on it, and use it to provoke the retaliation of a really dangerous enemy unit. But if it's that dangerous, it's probably got high status resistance, which you'd have to lower first. And surely you've got better ways to deal with that. So I don't rate Static Shield, but Tome of Warding, on the whole, is fantastic. Next, let's have a look at Tome of Scrying. And frankly, I think Tome of Scrying is really underrated. Keep an eye on your enemies and let nothing pass you. More vision, true sight, inflicting marked. All very nice. Starting with guided projectiles makes base attacks of enchanted units. Ignore accuracy penalties for the obscuring condition caused by units that are in the way and certain terrain. If you have ranged units and you're attacking the enemy units, chances are you have other units in the way. Like 80% of the time you're gonna have other units in the way, which means you're gonna get value from guided projectiles. This is a really, really nice bonus to your ranged units, battle mage units, and whatever. Don't overlook this. This just makes everything more accurate. It's great. Precognition is the same thing, but for heroes. It's in the battle mage tree, but it does affect magic and ranged attacks. Let's have a look at Mental Mark. This is one of the most cracked debuff spells in the entire game. Enemies in a 1 hex radius gain 2 marked, making them easier to hit, and 3 sundered resistance, making them take more damage from magic attacks, and have negative status resistance. Why is this so good? Well, it is 5 debuffs on an enemy that makes them more vulnerable to all of your attacks. Assuming you're using a lot of magic attacks, you're going to be more accurate, you're going to hit them, and there is no way to resist this effect. It's not a chance to inflict all this stuff, it's guaranteed. It is one of the best debuffs in the game for a battle mage heavy playstyle, and it synergizes very well with Chaos Eaters from the Tome of Pandemonium, because this is 5 debuffs for them to eat right there for a cost of only 15 mana. It's great. Scry Enemy is a world spell that you target on an enemy army. All enemies in the target army provide you with vision for 15 turns. This thing costs 30 mana. It is cheap. It is really cheap. And 15 is a lot of turns. Sure, you might not think, well, maybe I'm not going to get much use out of seeing what the enemy army sees. It's 30 mana, and it's 15 turns. You may as well throw this on and see what you can see from the enemy army. It may not have a huge impact, but because it's cheap enough, don't even worry about it. Summon Watcher. Oh, this guy makes the Evoker obsolete. Summon a Watcher, a battle mage unit with increased vision capabilities. This guy has some crazy abilities. First of all, he's got a repeating lightning attack, which is fantastic. And he's got Psychic Gaze. This uses all his action points, but it does the full damage of all his 3 projectiles. And it always hits at 6 range. The enemy takes damage, has a 60% chance of being stunned, and gains 2 marked, which makes them easier to hit. Not only that, but this guy is a beast. This thing here only has a single turn cooldown. The Watcher has charge resistance, he has Demolisher, he is immune to flanking, he has pass-through, he has true sight, he has far sight, and he is an ethereal unit with all the immunities it comes with. What a beast! What an absolute beast! This is one of the best battle mages in the game, and you can just summon them anywhere into your army. Seriously, this thing is great. Lastly, and definitely least, you have the Tower of True Sight. This is a building the city achieves true sight, making it possible to spot invisible or camouflaged enemies. If you think you need it, that's nice, I guess. Most of the time you won't need it. Wouldn't even worry about it. So let's move on and have a look at the Tome of Amplification. Starting with the Resonance Field, Special Province Improvement, +5 mana, +5 world map and combat casting points, and counts as a conduit. This is great! You don't need it if you're playing as a Wizard King. And why would you not play as a Wizard King? But if you're playing as a champion, or if you're playing as a Dragon Lord, putting one of these in every single one of your city is not a bad idea. And even if you are a Wizard King, if you're planning on lots of conduit adjacency type stuffies, having resonance fields so you can plop down yet another conduit anywhere is always nice. Your hero skill is Spell Amplification, and wow, look at this one. Makes tactical spells deal plus 20% damage. Pretty simple, but you can't go wrong. If you are using lots of tactical spells, and you should be if you're taking this tome, then this is a no-brainer. Just take this. You can also make even more use out of it with Conjure Amplification Pylon. A stationary structure that deals damage and increases the damage of your spells by 20%. And yes, this stacks with the hero skill, Spell Amplification, so you can get plus 40% damage on all your tactical spells. Just think about rocking up with a Lava Burst, which is buffed with plus 40% damage. Ooh, very nice. The only issue with this, and it's not the cost, this only costs 15 mana, the only issue is that sometimes conjuring this can feel a little bit like a waste of a spell casting turn. You can fix that though if you have Overchannel on a Wizard King, if you have Quickening so you can cast a spell on the first turn of combat, or if you have Surge Spellcasting, both of those last ones coming from the Astral Empire development tree, because those will really help get you more value out of your amplification pylon, and then you can just start spamming your damaging tactical spells. Let's have a look at the rest of the tome. You have Frenzying Focus, enchantment for battle mages and supports, but let's be honest, you're really doing it for the battle mages here. Every time your battle mage hits a target, they gain 1 stack of Strengthened, making them do plus 10% damage. If you're going heavy battle mages, this is a real nice buff. The battle mage can hit 3 times in 1 turn, so it can get 3 stacks of Strengthened and really make a lot of use out of it. Nice enchant, make sure you pick it up. You also get access to Chain Lightning, a damage spell. Target enemy unit sustains 20 lightning damage. The effect passes on to another enemy within 3 hexes, and it passes on up to 2 times. This one, I don't think it's as good as Fulmination from the Tome of Evocation. It costs 30 mana to cast. You can kind of finagle it to hit who you want. If the enemy is more spread out, so you wouldn't get much value out of Fulmination, then Chain Lightning is definitely more damage. But it doesn't hurt to have it, but I still prefer the previous spell. Astral Blood in this tome is a really fantastic buff. Gives your race attunement fortune whenever a spell is cast, and this is whenever you cast a spell or your enemy casts a spell, the unit gains plus 10% crit chance. Ooh, plus 10% crit chance. This can very rapidly stack up to plus 50% crit chance, and you can do all kinds of nasty things with that. It obviously has synergy with Star Blades from the Mystic culture, and it has great synergy with the Tome of Revelry, which can increase your critical hit damage. Plus, if you can get loads of crit on one of your spell-casting heroes, Gilded Magic in the Tome of the Golden Realms. Look it up, that's some nasty stuff right there. Otherwise, there's a little bit of anti-synergy here with non-racial units because they don't get this. There is no way, for example, to give a Watcher from the Tome of Scrying. There's no way to give this guy your attunement fortune, which is a real shame. So, if you're taking this, you might want to be looking at making use of it in other units. This isn't just your battle mages, this affects melee units. So even if you have watchers which don't benefit from it, your melee units can. But you can always take battle mages of your race if you've got high tier battle mages like Awakeners. It's just a nice thing to have all around. Amplified Minds is a great little city spell. Minus 10 city stability is not a whole lot, and you get plus 20 knowledge income out of it. This is very valuable, especially in the early game. It will help boost your research immensely. Basically, the trade-off is always worth it. Never mind this minus 10 city stability. Just build a tavern or a bathhouse if you really need it. And if you're Dark Culture, it's no downside at all. It's just free knowledge for a tiny little bit of mana upkeep. Lastly, and definitely not least, we have Amplify Arrows. Physical ranged attacks of enchanted units deal plus 4 lightning damage, minus 2 physical damage, and oh boy, 30% of their damage to another target within 3 hexes. This is crazy. This can spread damage and debuffs all over the place. If you have an archer that spreads debuffs like the Pursuers from the Dark Culture who spread Weaken, this means that their Weaken can spread to the second target. Amplified Arrows also means that if the first target dies from one of the first or second arrows in a repeated attack, the archer just turns around and shoots the second target. Doesn't even matter. So you get free damage out of it, and it is a lot of extra damage. Even if this only did 10% of the damage, this would be amazing for spreading debuffs, for hitting a second target. It's great. Slap your archers with all kind of enchantments, put debuffs on them, and just watch them melt entire armies on their own. It's incredible. Let's move on to our first Tier 3 tome with the Tome of Summoning. Call forth, control, and enhance magic origin units. Let's start with the Province Improvement, the Summoning Well. Extra mana, extra mana and knowledge for adjacent conduits. That's really nice. Always good to have. This is the third conduit province improvement we've seen in the Astral Tomes so far, and I will never turn one down. This one also says combat summon spells in the domain cost no mana, which is really nice. I mean, in theory, there's a lot of high-tier combat summon spells, such as Astral Reflections, Avatar of Chaos, Explosive Manifestation. All of these cost a lot of mana, and if you're on the defensive, which isn't necessarily all that common, getting those spells for free in combat is phenomenal. It seems really inconsistent when I've tried this in the past. It seems sometimes it costs no mana and sometimes it doesn't, so it might possibly be bugged, but hopefully it'll be fixed in the future, and just give it a try yourself, see if it works. Otherwise, we've got a hero skill, Wisp Familiar. Start combat with an Astral Wisp. Now, this is a great one. It's basically a free Tier 1 Battle Mage, and it's a very annoying Tier 1 Battle Mage because if you hit it in melee, you have a chance of being stunned. Free units, good. I don't need to say that twice, but yeah, Wisp is great. You've got a lot of great spells in this tome. Starting with Arcane Restoration, heals all friendly Magic Origin units plus 20 temporary hit points. Now, Magic Origin units are, of course, anything you summon, except sort of Zealots and Irregulars, but it's basically anything you summon, as well as a lot of the units in this tome, any of your summoned animals from the Nature Tome, and all of the undead from the Undead Tomes in Shadow. So there are a lot of Magic Origin units, and healing all of them on the battlefield, plus 20 hit points, for the low price of 45 mana is always good. Arcane's Supercharge is a really powerful buff to any friendly Magic Origin units. It is expensive, it costs 100 mana, but it gives 5 strength and 3 bolstered defense and resistance and static charge, which means it does extra lightning damage for 3 turns. It is a very pricey buff, but you have a lot of options for what kind of magical origin unit you want to cast it on. Put it on a very powerful unit and see it wreck. There are all kinds of high-tier magical origin units that you have access to, be they phase beasts, be they high-tier animals that you summon, all sorts. This is a seriously good buff. Arcane Bond is a debuff spell. Target enemy Magic Origin unit has a 90% chance of becoming mind-controlled for 2 turns. If unsuccessful, deal 30 lightning damage. This is a 2-unit swing, if it works. 1 less for them, 1 more for you. Doesn't last for very long, but a 2-unit swing is a 2-unit swing, and you can throw it away and make sure it eats up retaliation attacks. It only costs 45 mana as well, and there are more Magic Origin units than you may think. Again, summoned animals and undead. Usually, they all count as Magic Origin units, so think about what you can control in the enemy army. You also have access to a common summon. You also have access to a combat summon in the form of Conjure Astral Keeper. Yes, that is right. This is a combat summon spell, although up until the last patch, it was strangely labeled as a damage spell. Summon an Astral Keeper, a support unit that heals units even in death. It lasts for 3 turns, at least it does now anyway, with the changes in the Wyvern patch. Essentially, it is a support unit that you just conjure in the middle of battle. It has a single blast attack like most support units, and it has a heal, which also gives the unit lightning damage. This heal has a 2-turn cooldown, so you're probably not going to get much use out of it. But if you need extra healing, you now have a way to turn 45 mana into a unit that heals, instead of casting a heal. And if it dies, friendly units heal extra hit points if they're within a 2-hex radius. So it's a nice thing if you need the extra support unit. Combat summons are always good. You can use them for all kinds of things like distracting the enemy. So, nice to have. Lastly, you have Summon Astral Serpent. This is a summon spell, not a combat summon. This is a really annoying unit that's very good at getting to enemy back lines with Shattering Refuge, which makes it invulnerable for 1 turn. It's not very good at getting back out of enemy lines alive, but it's very good at going in and killing archers. It is pretty expensive for what it does. Tier 3 fighter unit, costs 150 mana, but if you really need to kill an enemy back line, there are few things better. Our second tier 3 tome is the Tome of Teleportation, and is this a spicy one. Your special province improvement is the Chrono Gate, which is a teleporter that doesn't have an expensive mana cost to it, and doesn't require you to invest 200 Imperium into picking up the teleporter's skill. It also has some adjacency bonuses helping you get mana and knowledge from adjacent conduits or research posts, but if you're building a teleporter, you're probably building it in a place where you think you need it most. This lets you get teleporters out of the game early, and you can even build them alongside another teleporter if you feel so inclined. Might be handy if you have teleportation mastery. The problem with Chrono Gates is that you cannot build them within outposts, so if you want to build outposts to teleport your units to the front lines, you will have to pick up the Teleporter Empire development skill anyway. But these are very handy to have earlier in the game. They can help you build a teleportation network early. Quick Phase is a really fantastic ability. This is a Battle Mage hero skill, and it lets you cast a teleport for free. This is a free action. It's a shorter range than most other phase abilities, but that doesn't matter. It's free. This lets you reposition your hero to either get away from being trapped in combat, or put them in position to use any AoE abilities that use full actions. It is always good to have. Probably one of the best skills for a Battle Mage hero. You can also get the wonderful Quick Phase on your Battle Mage units and support units with the phasing enchantment. Again, this offers what is essentially the same thing as Quick Phase, a free action that lets you move a short distance. Get them into position to use AoEs, get them out of danger. One of my favorite Battle Mage enchantments. Mass Recall is a world spell that makes the target friendly army teleport back to the nearest owned city. This costs 100 mana and is very good for saving any army that manages to get caught out of position by a load of enemies that are about to catch up and kill it, or if you really need to pull your armies back to defend a location. It's especially handy if you have a really solid network of chrono gates or teleporters set up so that the army can basically move anywhere in the world that you have your teleport network. Later on, if you build like high tier wizard towers, you get access to a similar spell that pulls your armies back to the throne city, but that comes a lot later and is really expensive to get to, so mass recall's good to have. The Phase Beast is a tier 4 shock unit, and tier 4 shock units are very nice to have. It's a little bit squishy for a tier 4 shock unit, and if you just charge it willy-nilly into the back lines and phase it behind your enemies, it might get killed, so be a little bit careful with it. But Heavy Charge Strike gives you a lot of flexibility for cancelling defense mode and retaliation attacks. It does a lot of damage, it can really kill enemy archers very easily. And it's another magical origin summoned unit that you can use to fill out your armies. It moves quickly, and it's got displacement, which makes it a little bit annoying to kill for your enemies. Always nice to fill out an army with some of these to target your enemy back lines. Emergency Teleportation is a really fantastic healing spell. The wording on it is a little bit confusing, but basically it pulls the closest friendly target to the tile you select on the map, and it gives it a nice bit of a heal. For 45 mana, being able to pull a unit to safety and give it a heal is one of the best ways to save a unit that's in danger. It works especially well with some of the phasing and teleporting units like the Phase Beast we just talked about, or the Astral Serpent. You can also use this thing offensively. Let's say you have a nice Warbreed in your army who has a full action, 3 action point power cleave, and you just love to have him positioned just right to hit your enemy, but he can't run up and use his power cleave in the same turn. Well, don't worry, because emergency teleportation does not take any of a unit's action points, so you can actually use it to teleport your units into position to hurt your enemies big time. Lastly, in the Tome of Teleportation, you also have access to the Astral Trade Relay. Plus 10 gold income and plus 3 gold for each Astral Trade Relay in your empire. That's nice. I mean, it's a cheap enough building. You'll probably end up building them because gold is good, but it's nothing special. Our first tier 4 tome is the Tome of the Astral Mirror, which lets you cast astral reflections of your unit and leader and reflect damage back onto attackers. And oh boy, did this tome ever take a beating when the Dragon Dawn DLC dropped and the free Wyvern update with it. It is disappointing. Anyway, astral reflections are copies of another unit that deal half damage and cannot summon other units. The reason this tome used to be absolutely broken was summon astral reflections, but my boy, look how they massacred my boy. This spell summons 2 astral reflections of the target friendly unit onto unoccupied adjacent hexes, and it cannot target heroes and mythic units. Yes, this line was added in the Wyvern update, and this is what truly breaks my heart. Summon astral reflections used to let an astral ruler basically 1v1 entire armies. An astral ruler with spur to action and weaver used to be able to cast loads of astral reflections of themselves and just destroy entire armies without much effort. I understand that it needed to be changed, but it's still a decent spell. Summoning astral reflections gives you an extra few bodies to throw away. Very good if a unit has some powerful abilities. I'm sure I can still make good use out of these with Chaos Eaters and so forth. Pretty expensive at 150 mana to cast, but, you know, could be useful. It's just, its glory days are over. Mirror Veil is the enchantment you get here that reflects 50% of non-physical damage back onto attackers, and it applies to shield units and polearm units. If you're going up against battle mage heavy enemies or people with loads of enchantments on their weapons, this can be very nice just to bounce some extra damage back. Never hurts to hurt your enemy when they try and hurt you. It's also available as a hero skill, but this is only available for battle mages, so it's probably less useful than on units that you already expect to tank damage. Astral Revelation is a truly great sustained city spell. Units and cities you control gain plus 7 vision range. This means that you are probably going to be able to see the overwhelming majority of the map, which is a very handy thing to have in a game where sneaking up and surprising your enemies is a good way to take them out. No more suddenly being surprised by enemy stacks of AI suddenly running behind your lines and pillaging your units. The Mirror Mimic is a really interesting tier 4 unit that can turn itself into other units and gets stronger if it transforms into a low tier unit, essentially buffing its defensive stats and damage. And it gets weaker if it transforms into a higher tier unit. The Mimic's weird. It doesn't really slot into an army very well because you can't plan around it. You don't necessarily know what you're going to be fighting, and sometimes just having one of your own units is better than copying one of the enemy's units. But it does copy enemy racial enchantments, racial transformations, if that's something that might be useful to you, and it benefits from your own unit enchantments. Still, I think Mirror Mimic's probably not the best summonable unit in all of the Astral Tomes. Throne of Mirrors is a city structure. When this city is besieged, grants the defender an astral reflection of their ruler if they are not present themselves. So this is now the only way to get an astral reflection of your ruler. I don't find myself ending up in defensive sieges very often, so this isn't a big deal to me. Overall, the Tome of the Astral Mirror is fun and it has a few nice effects, but it's no longer the powerhouse it used to be. I hope you were able to experience it back in its glory days. Moving on to our second Tier 4 tome, with Tome of Astral Convergence, and this one is probably the better of the two Tier 4 tomes now, after the Wyvern update. But you start off with a very nice hero skill here, Arcane Surge. This is a hero skill for your Battle Mage heroes, and it gives them strengthened and bolstered defenses whenever you or your enemy casts a spell, which is probably going to be pretty often by the time you get to Tier 4. Making your Battle Magic heroes, who are probably your most powerful units on the battlefield, constantly get stronger. This is a no-brainer. Don't sleep on this one, pick it up. Enjoy the plus 50% damage and extra resistance they're going to get. This tome also gives you access to a siege project in the form of Arcane Maelstrom. No towers will be present to aid the defender in battle, and during combat 3 random enemies sustain 10 fire or lightning or frost damage each turn. No towers and free damage each turn? Yes please. This only costs 100 mana, and it only speeds up sieges by +2, but it's a very nice siege project just for the fact that you get no towers and free damage. Astral Attunement is the major race transformation available to the Astral Tomes, and it's not one of the best. Pass Through, which lets units move through obstacles, is nice to have, but other major race transformations give you Flying, which is even better. So mostly you're getting this major race transformation for the economic benefit, and the economic benefit is pretty nice. By this point in the game, you will probably have decent enough population to get a good chunk of mana and knowledge out of this. It's not special, but if it's the only major race transformation you have access to, you should probably pick it up, because it's good to have. Explosive Manifestation is a fantastic combat summon spell. This costs 100 mana, and it's a very nice bit of AoE damage, plus you get a summon. It says it summons a random tier 2. What this actually means is that most of the time you're going to get a Flow Serpent out of it. That's those annoying tier 2 Astral Serpent looking things that get refuged every time they get hit. They only have a little bit of health, but they're very annoying to kill. You can one-shot it if you have a charge unit, but otherwise it's probably going to stick around for a couple of turns. This is a good way to get rid of archers. If you're really lucky, the less common option that you can summon is the Astral Siphoner, which is a tier 3 unit with a lot more health and a stronger attack, as well as Astral Pull, which lets it pull units out of the enemy formation. This thing is great for disrupting the enemy backlines. It's a fantastic combat summon spell, and you'll get a lot of good use out of it. Cascading Power is a very weird little world spell. Whenever you cast a spell in tactical combat, adds a stack of cascading power to that combat. A random enemy takes 5 lightning damage for each active stack at the end of your turns. This isn't a huge amount of damage because most battles only last a few turns anyway, so it's not going to make a huge difference, but it's a world spell. It's not taking up one of your turns in combat casting this specifically, so you may as well have it on. Just don't expect much out of it. At the time I wrote this and tested it, Cascading Power was actually bugged and only lasted 10 turns, rather than being fully sustained. That might have changed in the Wyvern patch, but that remains to be seen. I will update you if I figure it out. Lastly, you have Astral Shattering, which is a fantastic world spell. I mean, it is really nasty. This one costs you 150 mana, and it just destroys the enemy province. It says, target enemy province that doesn't contain an ancient wonder. It has its province improvement raised, and it spawns a powerful marauding army of astral sea creatures. This is really, really great for getting rid of enemy magic victory province improvements, if you need to do that. Of course, if the enemy has a spell jammer, you'll have to figure out a way to disable that first. But even if you're not using it to get rid of enemy province improvements, this spawns seriously nasty armies. We're talking multiple Lost Wizards, multiple Magebanes, high power stacks of armies. Just summon them into the enemy's back garden. They probably won't do a huge amount, since they're just a marauding army. You can't control them. They roam around randomly and will just attack things whenever they feel like it. But having them in your enemy's back door, very nice. Plus, you always really benefit from having any spell you can get to destroy enemy province improvements, so it's good to have. Moving on to our last tome, the Tier 5 Tome of the Archmage. All Tier 5 tomes are strong, but this one is probably the strongest. We'll start by having a look at the hero skill, which used to be a lot better. Unfortunately, they have really gutted this thing in the Wyvern update. This used to make all your magic attacks guaranteed critical hits. Now it's only plus 40% crit chance and plus 20% accuracy. That's still really good, but it is nowhere near the sheer power that guaranteed crits used to be, especially since there is a cap on critical hit chance, which I believe is 70%. Nevertheless, you can potentially put this on your battle magic heroes and combine it with some really powerful effects, like Gilded Magic, which is basically a stun. You can stun your enemies on a critical hit, which with maximized magic you're going to be getting a lot of critical hits. But this is just the least of this ridiculously powerful tome. Let's have a look at what the rest of it has to offer. Astral travel here used to be utterly bonkers when you had the brokenness that was the Astral Reflections and Tome of the Astral Mirror. Those have since been nerfed, but the ability to teleport your leader to any world hex is still pretty good. Still, your leader's not going to be soloing entire armies anymore, so it's a lot less effective than it used to be, and this only teleports your leader, not your leader and their army. Still, it's a nice spell to have. Your leader is probably going to be one of your most powerful units, and you can have them support any army you need them to, or pull them out of danger. It just gives you a lot of flexibility. Time Stop here is a really fantastic debuff spell, one of the most powerful you have available. It does cost a hefty price of 200 mana base without any discounts, but it has some really nasty effects. It is a guaranteed 1 hex wide stun, 1 hex wide distracted, which means all your attacks are flanking attacks, and the enemy gains 5 stacks of marked. These are some serious debuffs. I am sure you could do nasty things with a Chaos Eater here, but you don't even need to. You don't even need to think about all the ways you can stack bonuses to flanking. This debuff is so strong that whatever your army composition is, whatever you have in mind, this spell will just let you kill everything it touches. It is nasty. And this is, again, one of the weaker elements of this tome. Cosmic Overdrive is a fantastic buff, which grants enchanted units plus 30% damage and very fast movement, and affects all your Magic Origin units and your combat summons. You probably have a lot of Magic Origin units if you're going into the Tome of the Archmage, so a significant portion of your army is going to get a huge buff here, as well as all the flexibility that comes with very fast movement. And again, this isn't even the best this tome has to offer, though I should mention that if you have an army of animals because you've gone very heavily into nature, this will probably affect all your summoned animal units. Same is true if you've gone for a very undead heavy army. But the absolute best that the Tome of the Archmage has to offer is Disruption Wave. This is the most powerful spell in the whole game, without any exceptions. Disruption Wave is utterly bonkers. Disable enemy unit enchantments for 3 turns. Dispels all positive status effects on all enemies, and dispels all negative status effects on all allies. By this point in the game, by the time tier 5 rocks around, unit enchantments make up a significant portion of what makes your enemies and your own units very strong, as well as buffs and debuffs having a significant effect on turning the tide of battle. Disruption Wave just says, no, none of that. I don't think you should have those enchantments or those buffs, and I don't think you should debuff me. Basically, this is one spell that turns the tide. Unenchanted units will not stand a chance against your Cosmic Overdrive Legion of enchanted battle mages and magic origin summons. The Tome of the Archmage is incredibly powerful. It's lost a lot of its strength in the Wyvern update, but it is still, without doubt, one of the most powerful tier 5 tomes available. A lot of the benefits from other tier 5 tomes are in unit enchantments or in buffs, and you just turn them off. So, that is my guide to the Astral Tomes. A lot has changed in the Wyvern update, and it has really thrown me off my game, suddenly realizing, oh, wait a minute, that's not what I thought that did. But I still hope you managed to find this helpful, and if you did, please leave me a like and send me a subscribe so I know to do the rest of these. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again for the next one. Take care.